Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2024 KLR. This one's available in a new color that's white, and this is also the S model. It's actually the shorter ride height model, and it's something that I would consider even if you're about my height, which is 6 feet tall. So in this review, we're gonna talk about a couple of the differences in the KLR lineup for 2024. We're gonna go over this bike in detail so you know exactly what it is. We're gonna talk about who it's for and who it might not be for. And if you have any questions that I leave out and you wanna know more, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. And if you have any questions at all that I don't answer, they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup. And I get to come back to this bike and the other bikes, again, the full size or full height KLR as well. And we can come through and go through your questions on video to make sure that you have a video database of all the information you need. So of course, I'll try to answer your questions in the comments as well, but we can do more and more and more videos. So do me a favor, if that sounds like your kind of thing, make sure you subscribe and let's get going with this review. So let's place the KLR briefly in the motorcycle lineup. First of all, this is an adventure bike, but really it started out many years ago as a dual sport bike. There are a lot of things that are unchanged on this bike from quite a ways back. And what that means is you have a massive aftermarket for this bike, so you can always add accessories, add luggage, that kind of thing. But you also have a history of reliability. This thing is known by some as the unkillable KLR. This thing goes a long, long ways. And what this one is a no-cost lowering kit. And what I mean by that is a lot of time with a lowering kit, you have to spend extra money for an extra seat. You have to spend extra money for suspension that then maybe wasn't set up from the factory for that bike. And then you're spending more and more and more to get something that works for you. What this is a dual sport bike that has changed into a very economical, as far as affordable adventure bike. It's extremely capable and it really works for a lot of people. And in this S model, I think it makes it less intimidating for people that are my height and certainly a lot more accessible for people who are shorter. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of all that. But this bike for me is a real kind of sweet spot in that affordable bike that can allow you to go anywhere. It is not something that is perfect at any one thing, but it is very good at a lot of things. And for a lot of riders who are average riders, this is going to be all the bike you ever need and maybe all the bike you ever want. So what we're going to do is start at the front end, work our way back. We're going to start talking about some of the differences in this KLR, the S model, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you myself on it in just a second here, and we're going to talk about all those things that make the KLR of 2024 a really valuable bike and a really good value bike. So usually I start at the front wheel, but I think because it's the S model, I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. We're going to talk about that as I hop on. So first of all, how is this bike lower? I want to be clear that the frame, handlebars, bodywork, almost everything here is still factory KLR. And what that means is whether you get accessories, crash bars for the full-size version or this version, it's all going to be the same. Whether you get luggage for this version or the other version, it's all the same. So how do they do that? First of all, they scoop out the seat here. You'll notice on the regular KLR, the rack here comes level with the seat, whereas this seat starts angling down. So they do scoop out the seat a little bit here to create a little bit of space there, and then they lower the suspension from 7.9 inches on the regular KLR to 6.7 inches of wheel travel on this. So that's wheel travel. And then on the back side, from 8 inches to 7 inches. So about an inch on the back, just a hair over 1.2 inches on the front. I'm gonna set my iPad aside here, and what does that mean for me as a 6-footer? Well, if you've seen me as a 6-footer on an adventure bike, and I sit on a lot of adventure bikes on this channel, this is the only one that I can easily flat foot. And what that means is this is a go anywhere bike that I can ride flat-footed. We sat on the Versus here just a couple days ago, which is a street bike, and I was still slightly tippy-toed on that. This is a very, very approachable bike, and you can see I've got full control with my legs here of leaning it back and forth and having some confidence. Now, do you lose capability with losing suspension travel? Technically, yes, but to me, this isn't the bike you buy if you're an adventure rider that wants to go jumping off jumps. This is the adventure bike you buy that you're going to go across all terrain. So it's not really a high performance bike, and because you lose some travel here, I don't know that it's going to matter to a lot of typical KLR riders. But here's who it will matter to. This is still a 2-passenger bike. You could take 2 people on this. Once you start loading this up with a second passenger and your gear, that inch of ground travel that you lost already just to lowering this bike, you're now going to lose a little bit more again to the weight. That's something you have to keep in mind if you're going off-road. However, I feel like with the power level of this bike, most people are riding their KLR on their own anyways, so that's not a huge deal. So then it just comes down to how much weight do you put on this, because I don't think most KLR riders are bottoming out their suspension. Now I know I'm working on YouTube. Somebody in the YouTube comments is gonna say, well, I bottom my suspension on the KLR all the time. Great, this bike's probably not for you. But if you're the type of rider that wants to go anywhere, gravel roads, dirt roads, light trails, that kind of thing, just the ability to actually explore, I think this may actually be a bike that you will go further down the trails for, because when there are those dips and potholes, what are you concerned about on a large adventure bike? You're concerned about getting that foot down before dropping the bike. And on this one, you'll get your foot down. So yes, you may want an accessory bash plate if you're concerned about ground clearance, which you can get here, but this is a very, very manageable bike. So let's start at the front wheel. We're gonna talk about a difference for 2024, and then we'll work our way back. So whenever I look at the front wheel of a bike, you can start to see the manufacturer's intention with this bike. And what you see here is pretty simple stuff. Again, not a whole lot of advanced stuff here, just a regular right side up fork, not an upside down fork. Even the regular old style like shields here that are gonna keep that dust and dirt and anything from bugs, all that kind of stuff that could break your suspension seals. This is how you're gonna keep it clean. They used to do these on old fashioned bikes, still works here. It's been a very effective way to keep your seals kind of clean and that kind of thing. This is a 21-inch front wheel, so that shows you that it's certainly capable off-road. Interestingly, a lot of adventure bikes are 21 and 18 front and rear. This is a 21 and 17 front and rear, but still, very much off-road. Spoked wheels, which is what you want for that little bit of strength that you're going to have off-road. A single disc here, and this is an ABS model. If you choose to go with the S version, that lower ride height version, you are going to have ABS. If you want to step up to the regular KLR, ABS is an option. You can buy it or you can't. Now, it's not switchable, but I think, to be fair, if it's really a concern that it has ABS, you could probably pull a fuse on there. I haven't tried that, but that's probably what you could do. I'm a big fan of having ABS on a bike like this because these tires, although are very good for, dual sport adventure bike roads tires for the road, when you have a tire with this much off-road traction, you're going to have a little bit less on-road traction. So coming out of the slippery, muddy, wet areas onto the roads, you just have a little bit less rubber on the road, and having ABS is going to be a nice feature to have on the road. You can debate whether you want it off-road or not, and it depends on the level of and type of off-roading that you're doing. But if you want it off, you could probably pull a fuse and that would make it work. Let's move back through this bike now. So let's talk about the heart of this bike. The heart of this bike is a single-cylinder 650cc engine. Now, this is a 652cc engine. It is different than every other Kawasaki 650. A lot of people think that this is the same 650 engine that's in something like the Versus 650, and that's not the case. The reality is this is a lower-powered engine, but it also has that grunt down low, that tractor ability of an off-road engine that's really going to work well. So it can get you through the junk on low RPMs, whereas something like the Versus, Ninja, Vulcan, Z650, the Z650 RS, all of those are the twin cylinder, which are a little bit better for high-end revving power. This one's all low down. So it is a different 650 engine. It's been around for a long time. It's reliable. When the redesigned KLR came out with this more adventure style styling a couple years ago, they added fuel injection, and that makes it sort of legal around the world, which means they can still sell it around the world. And of course, it gives you the benefits of fuel injection. But really, it's been around for quite a while. So that's the heart of this engine. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the driver's environment, the riding area. This area here is worth noting. This is a hard plastic area. It's going to do a great job of helping anything the tire kicks up to stay away from the key components here, but it is not going to be a bash plate. The reason that I think you may want to consider a bash plate on this is because you lose that 1.2 inches of ground clearance up front, or wheel travel up front, about an inch of wheel travel out back. So you're going to have a potential for a slightly lower area here that can get struck, and it'll depend on the kind of off-roading that you're doing. If you're just going to go down any gravel road or any fire road, that kind of thing, you're probably going to be fine without having to put something on here. But if you're going to hit those really rocky areas, or you're concerned that you may hit those rocky areas, throw on the accessory plate on this, and then you'll be good to go. It's built, the frame's strong enough to build it. The frame runs right underneath the engine here, so you're really mounting a solid piece onto solid pieces here. It's not like they've used the engine as a stressed member. So again, sort of older style, but but the reason they do that older style is a lot like a Jeep. You know, a Jeep's driveline is still a very old style, but it works, it's strong, so a lot like that here. So that's one thing you may want to consider here. Down here you've got these rubber foot pegs here. Those are really good for anything that's a larger single-cylinder engine. Single-cylinder engines, like I said, a lot of torque down low, but they also are known as thumpers. They're going to be a sort of a thump, thump, thump to this. Not so much a vibration because it's a lower revving thing, but it is going to be a thumper. Fully capable of highway speeds. A lot of people are concerned about, hey, does this thing go highway speeds? I hear it doesn't have a ton of power. It'll go highway speeds, no problem, but it's not a sport bike. It's not going to have a ton of passing power at 80 miles an hour, for instance, or 130 plus kilometers an hour. So let's move back from here. So one thing you don't get in this S model of the KLR is you don't get the Adventure package, which is a package from Kawasaki on the regular KLR that adds the side bags and other things that make it more of an adventure model. Now that doesn't mean you can't turn this S into an adventure model, but let's just show you a couple things first. I don't know if you can see, let me just kind of glance back at the camera. Yeah, right there in front of my finger and right here in front of my finger, there are little tie down areas. So what's cool about the regular KLR and this KLR S is if you have bags that you want to strap on here, you have a big rack system, big grab system here that you can put on whatever you want. The other thing is, so we'll show you the rack in a second, you can drill in things and put boxes on there to sort of preset up for that. But even if you just had a duffel bag or a dry bag and that was all you were going to take with this bike, you can do that right from the factory. You've got all the things you need. Got a little bit of cover here over your exhaust, so if you were to drop it, you're not going to dent up your exhaust. It's got some protection there. And again, you can pick this bike up. It's a little lower to the ground. It's not the lightest adventure bike in the world, but it feels much lighter because it's lower to the ground. Let's take a look on top of the rack. Actually, before we do, let's just sort of show you that rack. Again, the regular KLR, a little bit more level with the seat, whereas this one you can see level with the seat and then a little dip down, which is part of what gives you that extra, ground clearance or extra ability to put your feet down. Let's take a look at the top of that rack. So taking a look at this rack, again, from the factory, this plate is here. So first of all, you've sort of got those Allen key bolts here, but you've got all kinds of mounting points for different types of luggage. That makes this available to aftermarket options, to Kawasaki options, to whatever you want. This plate alone on some bikes costs several $100s more, and right here it's built in for you. So you've got the ability to take some luggage. Over here, this is keyed to your ignition key. There's a little bit of a tool kit in there, so you always have that accessible to you, unless of course you bury it underneath your luggage, but again, for most it's underneath the seat, so you've got options to get that. But it's nice to know that you have this here, and again, whatever you want to add, there's so many options to add here, again, because it's just a KLR. There's no special difference between the KLR and the S model. Taking a look at the shifter side here, not a lot of magic here. No quick shifter, nothing else. Just a 5-speed transmission instead of a 6-speed transmission. One thing I really do like though is for a bike that comes with a side stand, and you can get center stands for the KLRs, although I haven't checked on the S model. I figure you can, but haven't actually checked. But one thing I really like for a side stand on an adventure bike is if you look in there, that is a very, very large, let me just walk around the bike and sort of put my hand next to it, very large foot on the kickstand. So you don't have to buy an accessory after the fact. I mean, it's hard to sort of show on camera how large that is, but it's a nice large foot there. And again, because you're going to be parking this thing on sand, on dirt, you really want the ability to have something that really has a good foot on there. It's just going to keep this bike upright in loose conditions. Before we take a look at the dash here, worth pointing out, you have a 23-liter fuel tank here, and this is a relatively efficient engine, so you have a ton of range, and that's a really key piece on a bike that you want to go anywhere. If you're going to get it off the beaten track, down dirt roads where there's no fuel stops, 23 liters is going to get you a long, long ways. Now let's take a look at the backside of this fairing, so the driver's environment of this fairing. There's a lot to show you here. On the adventure model, you're going to have things like this, and this filled in, but they are roughed in right now. So right now over here is just a rough in for what Kawasaki offers as a USB port. Over in the center of your screen over here is the roughed in for a 12-volt port. And this does have a better capacity generator than in the past. And it's kind of hard to show you, but right up here, the handlebars are turned right now, but right up there is a rough in for driving lights. So again, this thing's fully equipped to be set up as a true adventure bike instead of just a dual sport bike. And then if you look a little bit higher up, you do have a slightly adjustable windshield. It is adjustable with Allen keys, so you can move that up or down. Again, the toolkit comes with you, so you could move it on the go, but most people are going to kind of set it and forget it. But you do have this little rail up here. If you don't want to mount your GPS to the handlebars, you can mount a GPS up here. And again, you have PowerPoint options, USB, 12 volt, that kind of thing. So you can really make this into an adventure bike. We're going to show you the front end of the bike in a second with its LED lighting, LED headlighting, which is really nice to have. But let's just take a look at the dash while we're here. We're going to zoom all the way in here. And what you have here is nothing too special, to be quite honest with you. So over there on the right side is a little temperature gauge warning. If you have a label in there, that's what's going on. Fuel gauge is obviously quite low right now. Once it starts getting very low, it flashes. You can sort of see that. Speed kilometers an hour right now, because we're in Canada. You have trip A right now on the very bottom here, trip A, trip B, odometer, and that's it. Throw a clock in there on the left of the speedometer, and that's what you have. One thing missing from here is a tachometer. Let's just quickly talk about why that may or may not matter on this bike. So I'm on record in the past for saying that I really think the KLR should have a tachometer on it, but I can kind of understand why they don't. First of all, I think every bike should have a tachometer, but to be fair with these single cylinder engines, this engine is going to make max power and then start dying off on power. If you look at a horsepower and torque curve on any engine, they build and then they start dying off. And the reality is that as this builds power, it builds power fairly early. Torque is down low, and then it starts dying off. So you're going to feel in your driving that this thing is starting to lose power as you're over revving it. You're just gonna very quickly adapt to revving it. And the reality is, not that you can't over rev this bike, but you're unlikely to over rev this bike, because unlike a 4-cylinder sport bike where you're looking for that red line as you're making peak power near red line, this one you're gonna feel that power down low. You don't need to run to red line. And the reality is, when you're driving this bike, normally when you're driving this bike in a variety of conditions, you're not going to be over revving it. You're gonna be probably overpowering it and then having to shift down anyway. So while I can forgive them because it doesn't have it, I think for our own sake, we'd like to know what the revs are at. But the reality is, you don't really need that. It's less worrying about over revving and more worrying about you can feel when it needs to shift far before you're gonna have to worry about hitting that red line. Now let's take a look at the front here, take a look at a few more details that are nice on this KLR, and then we'll talk about who it's for and who it's not for. So taking a look at the front of the KLR, no changes from the 2024 model from the 2023 model. You'll do see an ABS sticker here. The KLR didn't used to have the ABS, but when it has that ABS sticker, it's got ABS, of course. And then you again have this nice LED headlight here with the ability to flash to pass. Actually, we should show you the controls here because you have some more modern controls than some people would think as well. Really important to me that it has that bright LED light. As you're heading on an adventure bike, you're generally going places that are dark roads, no street lights, that kind of thing. One of the key differences with LED lights is not just the overall brightness, it's the sharp cutoff, but it's also that whiter light that comes out of it. This is closer to daylight in color, and it makes it much more easy for your eyes to tell if that bump in front of you is a rock or a rabbit, a rock or a raccoon, something that's going to stay put or something that's going to move. So really good lights is nice to have. This Kawasaki does it. And again, unlike Kawasaki's of the past, it's lit left and right, even on low beam, and the entire thing lights on high beam. So we'll show you the controls on that, but this is a big key piece of it because some of the competitors have stayed in that dual sport look. This does offer you some weather protection. You can see the hand grips as well as the body shape in general and the head and the windshield. It does give you a little bit extra protection so you can really go adventuring as opposed to just being a big dirt bike like it used to be in the past. Taking a look at the left side grip here, you've got your clutch lever right there. Not on a sister slipper clutch, but really not that heavy of a clutch either. You do have the hand protection here, and it is extensive hand protection. One thing it doesn't have is the full connection down to the bar end here. There's two schools of thought. One, if you were to drop it, that can extra protect, but this does have a lot of flex to it. So I think it's gonna give you the protection you need from both stones and gravel, and that's one of the reasons it's key on an adventure bike. As you're going down gravel roads, for instance, gravel can get kicked up, and if you have one of these, it's gonna hit there instead of your knuckles. And that can be the difference between getting home and not if you don't have the right gloves on. So just gonna give you a little extra protection there. One thing when I say more modern controls is they still have that trigger for the high beam here, which not every bike has. It's more of a newer thing. And when I say newer, especially in this class, a lot of bikes in this class, that big dual sport single cylinder class, again, KLR is more moved into the adventure bike now, but that big dual sport is often very dated. They don't have the same controls. So you have really quality feeling components, very up-to-date Kawasaki stuff right there, high beam, low beam, signal lights, and horn right there. So try to show you a little bit again there. Just more modern, better feeling controls than some of the real clicky stuff. This just feels proper on a modern bike. So let's talk about who this bike is for and who it's not for. So first of all, the KLR platform. This is kind of what we call old reliable, right? There's not a whole lot of new technology on this, but unlike some of the competition, they did some key updates. Fuel injection is a nice update. It's gonna help you with a little bit of mileage. It's gonna help you with, altitude change, that kind of thing. No carburetors, just makes it easier for a lot of people. Now, I guess the carb crowd's gonna fight back on me, but I just think that's a positive thing. You also have the bodywork here that is really true adventure styling. It's gonna give you a place to put a GPS. It's gonna give you a place to plug in, to have some stuff. It's gonna give you some wind and weather protection, gives you a better place to mount a windshield than just on the handlebars. So a lot of that makes this an adventure bike instead of a big dual sport bike. You also have a very cushy seat. Now let's talk about this as an adventure bike. Like I mentioned, this is not that higher powered. There are, 750s, 850 type bikes that you might think, oh, the engine's only a little bit bigger, that are in that adventure bike class. Those are generally considerably more powerful than this. This 650 is not a scary bike to drive. It has enough power to do everything, but it is in no way a sport bike. What this bike does is a true go anywhere bike. It gives you the ability to go anywhere. It's not a performance bike on road, it's not a performance bike off road, but it will allow you to go virtually anywhere. And that's what sort of opens up this S model. A lot of people think that this S model is going to be a low volume model purely for shorter people, but for me, this S model becomes an incredibly approachable adventure bike that I, even as a 6-footer, am extremely comfortable on because I can flat foot. And when you start heading off road and you have the undulations all around you on the ground instead of this flat floor or the flat road, having a bike that's a little lower to ground, knowing you're going to be able to get your foot to the ground makes you more comfortable. Now again, you're probably not going to go crazy off-road, but there's very few trails, roads, fire roads, dirt roads that you couldn't go down confidently on this bike, even if you're a taller person. So again, stepping up to the regular KLR is going to give you that extra 1.2 inches of suspension on the front and inch in the back. So that's the other thing to remember. My feet are lower to the ground, not just from a slight suspension drop, or loss in travel, but also from the lower seat. So those two things combined make this a very approachable bike. So is this for shorter riders? Absolutely. It's an adventure bike that will work for shorter riders. But to me, it's also that lower seat height adventure ride that allows the KLR rider to go anywhere. Do you want the adventure model? You have to accessorize it up yourself. That really has the crash bars, the lights, the bags. Those are the key pieces of that adventure model. You can't get that in the S model, but you can build it through Kawasaki's accessories or through aftermarket accessories, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, this is probably one of the most approachable adventure bikes you can get. And then the KLR also offers you tremendous value. In an adventure bike world where $20,000 Canadian is oftentimes a cheap adventure bike, this gets you into something that is much less cheaper, really the entry-level price point of that. So, I think the adventure model is still around $10,000 Canadian, and this is again cheaper than that. So again, up-to-date pricing, use the link in the description. You can check on all that. I never put pricing into my videos because it could be out of date the next day if they change that. But very affordable, very reliable, enough modern feel to this while still keeping that old reliable type pieces to it. And that's kind of what I love about this bike. So who is this for? All kinds of people. The S model is worth sitting on if you're thinking about a KLR, because you may just find that you get on this and right away feel really comfortable. And I can tell you right now, if you're comfortable and you feel confident on the bike, you're probably going to go further off-road than if you have more bike capability but less confidence on that. And that's one of the key pieces to this. Raising this up might give you more capability than you're comfortable getting out to, whereas this one, you can use all of its capability and get out there. So very long-winded ending to this, but I do think the S is worth considering. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, make sure you let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like. Thank Wheels and Deals for giving me complete access. And again, if you want to know more, let me know in the comments. We'll get back to you with more more videos and answers to your questions. We will be reviewing the KLR, the 2024, the little bit taller version as well as it comes in. All the 2024 Kawasaki's we're going to have on this channel. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.